Take a moment to settle in. Wherever you are, allow your body to rest deeply. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw loosen. Take a slow, easy breath in and gently let it out. There's no need to hold anything, fix anything, or do anything now. This time is yours. Let the day fall away like a heavy cloak slipped from your shoulders. Feel your limbs sink downward as if they are growing warmer, heavier, softer with each breath. The world outside can wait. Right now, there's only the slow rhythm of your breathing, the safety of stillness, and the soft comfort of a story waiting to unfold, like a lantern slowly being lit in the night. Let yourself drift gently as we step together into another time. Our story tonight begins in the quiet hours after sundown, in a city ringed with high stone walls, nestled within the deep folds of a medieval countryside. The year is 1373, and as the town settles into slumber, candles snuffed, shutters latched, hearths glowing dimly, one man awakens for his post. He is the night watchman. His name is Halric, and while most sleep, Halric begins to move slowly through the winding, cobbled streets of the old, walled city. He walks with a long wooden staff in one hand and a heavy iron lantern in the other. Its glow flickers gently, casting golden halos against the thick stone buildings as he walks. Listen to the hush. The city is silent now, except for the soft creak of his leather boots, the distant drip of water from a hanging wooden gutter, and the occasional whisper of wind weaving through alleyways. He wears a thick woolen cloak, patched and re-stitched over many winters, and tucked beneath it is a ring of iron keys that jingle ever so faintly with each step. Each key opens a different part of the city, a merchant's gate, a cellar door, a bell tower, a storeroom, but few people remember which is which anymore. Only Halric knows. He lights the wall torches one by one, using the glowing flame from his lantern. Each torch flares into life with a soft, crumbling flash, sending a gentle halo of warmth outward into the night air. As he does, Halric whispers greetings to the night. Evening, old stones. Still holding strong, are we? He murmurs, patting a cracked bit of limestone by the bakery. And to a stray cat slinking past with silver fur and clever eyes, there you are, shadow friend. Find any mice near the mill house? The cat gives no reply, but lingers near him for a moment, twining around his legs, before disappearing again beneath a cart. Halric continues on. He passes shuttered windows where tiny candle flames still flicker behind oiled parchment panes. Somewhere a baby coos and then quiets. Somewhere else a dog lets out a soft huff and goes back to sleep. The night is thick, but not dangerous, not yet. The watchman's job is to keep it that way, to notice when anything is out of place. A boot print in the wrong patch of mud. A gate left ajar that should be shut tight. A smell of burning when no fires should burn. But tonight, all is still. Still enough for Halric to hum. Yes, many watchmen were said to sing or hum softly to themselves, not to pass the time but to keep spirits away. For in the minds of many, darkness was a thing that listened. So Halric hums a low, gentle tune, half lullaby, half prayer, passed down from his grandfather, who once watched the same city walls. The melody is barely more than a breath, but it echoes faintly through the empty archways, soothing the stones themselves, it seems. And then he pauses, for he has reached his favorite part of the walk, the bell tower. It is tall, spindly, and slightly leaning older than the rest of the city. Its stones are darker, worn smooth by rain and time. Ivy creeps up its side in a spiral like a sleeping dragon. Haurik unlocks the heavy wooden door at its base and begins his climb. One step at a time, slow, steady. Wooden stairs creak beneath his boots. He knows each one by feel. The first always groans. The fifth has a nail that pokes through. The 12th squeaks twice. At the top, he opens the trapdoor and steps into the open air. The city lies below him, rooftops like dark teeth, streets curling like ribbons, chimney smoke drifting in silver trails, and beyond it all, the thick, ancient forest, black and endless, and a sky full of stars blinking like tiny fires. He sets down his lantern and leans on the wooden railing. There is no rush, no noise, just wind and the rhythmic hush of night breathing. This is the hour when Haurik thinks of his mother's old stories, about how watchmen were once chosen, not just for their strength or sight, but for their memory, because memory in the old tongue was called stonekeeper. And if a man remembered all that came before, the city would not be forgotten. And so Haurik remembers every old crack in the wall near the tanner's shop, every time the river froze early, every cart that broke a wheel at the north gate. He watches the lights blink out one by one across the homes below, and just before the final candle dims, he hums again, low, gentle, ancient, a lullaby not meant for people, but for the city itself, to remind it to sleep, to rest, to breathe. Then he rings the bell, once, not too loud, a simple mark of the hour, a custom, one that many don't even notice anymore. But once long ago the bell was used to signal peace, and by ringing it, Haurik lets the dark know, this place is watched. This place is safe. Down the stairs he goes again, his joints creaking softly like the boards beneath him. Outside he relocks the tower door and tests the latch twice. He never forgets, because in a walled city little things matter. A forgotten gate, a missed shadow, a single blown-out torch. They could mean everything, but tonight the shadows are where they should be, and Haurik walks on. He still has more streets to visit, more corners to whisper to, and so, lantern glowing like a small sun in the dark, he drifts deeper into the night. The path takes him past the narrowest street in the city, where two buildings lean so close together that even in daylight the alley stays dim. They call it the Needle's Eye. Most people avoid it after dark, fearful of superstition or strange echoes. But Haurik steps in without hesitation, letting his lantern light dance across the uneven walls. Here he walks slower. He always does. There's a hush that lives here older than the city walls themselves, the kind of silence that breathes beside you, the kind that makes your footsteps sound like they belong to someone else. Haurik runs his hand along the rough stone wall, counting the indentations with practiced fingers. 16 chips in the stone before the left turn. Still the same. He relaxes. The quiet here is familiar, safe in its way. As he reaches the end of the alley, he pauses beside a carved stone drain spout, shaped like a lion. Its teeth are moss-covered now, worn blunt by rain and frost. But Haurik still bows his head toward it, just a little. A habit from childhood. His mother once told him it watched over dreamers, that those who slept near the lion always woke. She believed the old city spirits lived in statues and corners, not churches. Alric never truly believed, but he never quite stopped believing either. That's how most people are, deep down. Back in the main street now, he adjusts the lantern's wick. The flame flares higher for a moment, then settles into a steady, buttery glow. The breeze shifts slightly, tugging at his cloak and bringing the faintest scent of warm ash and damp bread from a distant oven. Likely the baker's apprentice rose early, some did, to knead dough in the still hours when flour dust hung in the air like fog. Halric would greet them later, just before dawn. For now he listens. His ears, trained over decades, know the difference between wind and warning, a knocking shutter, a dropped tool, a muffled voice too late at night. But tonight the city holds its breath in a kind of reverent stillness. He approaches the southern gatehouse. The doors are massive, thick with iron rivets and old burn marks from a siege long ago. No one remembers the attackers now, just that they came in winter and were turned away. Halric passes his fingers over one of the scorched timbers and then checks the bar from the inside. Still solid, he tests the lock. Still tight. He looks out through the arrow slit at the dark road beyond the walls. Empty. Only the faint sound of wind moving through trees, far off, and the occasional cry of an owl. Beyond the forest, the world continues on, but in here, within these walls, it feels as though time slows down. Or perhaps it simply curls in on itself, like smoke rising from an old brazier. He begins the climb to the wall walk next, using the winding stone steps beside the gate. They're slick in spots where dew has gathered, and he treads carefully, using the lantern to guide each step. At the top, the view opens up to the outer fields, dark, vast, stretching like a great cloth across the land. The moon, pale and high, lays silver over every rooftop tile, every crooked chimney, every worn cobblestone. Up here it is colder. The wind bites more directly. Halric pulls his cloak closer, but his gaze remains steady. From this height he can see into the quiet courtyards, the still market square, even the tiled roof of the apothecary's house, with its moss-covered chimney pot. Everything is quiet. He walks the walls slowly, his boots clicking softly against the worn stone. Each step is placed with purpose, not for fear, but for respect. For centuries, others have walked this same path, some young, eager for a job and a coin, others old, like Halric, who no longer count the years but only the seasons. As he walks, he touches the stone at regular intervals places he's memorized. A chipped spot beside the east-facing gargoyle. A patch where lichen grows in a perfect circle. The place where lightning struck during a summer storm and left the faint scent of burnt air for days. These are his landmarks. Not on maps, but etched into his memory like lines in a beloved book. He reaches the far-cornered turret and steps inside for a moment's shelter. Here there's a small wooden bench and a niche carved into the wall that once held arrows. He sits just briefly to stretch his knees and sip from the leather flask he carries. The liquid is warm cider with a touch of clove. He doesn't drink deeply, just enough to warm the chest, soften the breath. Outside, the wind hums a little louder now, brushing against the turret walls like a sigh. Halric listens to it carefully, as one might listen to a story told by an old friend. The sound comforts him. It reminds him that the city is alive in its own way, breathing through stones, sighing through beams, dreaming through doorways. After a few moments he stands again, steady and sure, and returns to the wall walk. His rounds are far from finished, and dawn is still several hours away, but he is in no rush. The job is not to hurry, the job is to notice. And so, lantern held high once more, he begins the next stretch of his quiet, slow journey. There is a satisfaction in the solitude, not loneliness, but presence. The presence of the night, the presence of the stones, and of memories that live in corners others forget. Halric knows everyone. He knows which doors swell in the rain. He knows where ivy pushes through the cracks, stubborn and green. He knows which windows sometimes rattle without cause. And he knows the names of every dog that barks at shadows, and every child who leaves chalk marks on the city walls when they think no one sees, but Halric sees. That is the work of the watchman, to see even when others sleep, to walk even when others dream, to keep the rhythm of a city's breathing safe until the dawn. And he does so not with grand speeches or polished armor, but with steady steps, careful hands, and a voice that hums lullabies to old stones. And still the city sleeps. There is a strange kind of comfort in the repetition of his steps, in the circular rhythm of the rounds. The city never changes all at once. It shifts slowly, like sediment beneath a calm river, always adjusting but rarely disrupting the surface. Halric's feet know the pattern of each patrol, where to turn, where to pause, where to listen. And so he descends from the wall walk now, lantern casting warm gold against the stairwell, boots echoing in soft harmony with the stone, down into the merchant quarter, where the stalls sleep beneath canvas tarps tied down with ropes worn soft by years of handling. The market square is empty, except for a forgotten broom leaning against a crate, and a few baskets tucked beneath benches to dry. Halric walks among them like a ghost from the waking world. He stops beside the old well in the center of the square, a round stone mouth capped by a wooden grate. Its surface is slick with dew, and small tufts of moss grow in the cracks between the stones. He rests a hand on it, not to draw water, but simply to acknowledge it. The well is older than most of the city. Some say it marked the very first settlement. It has seen plague, harvest, rebellion, weddings, and prayers. Halric whispers a greeting to it under his breath, a tradition passed from the last watchman to him. Still full, old friend. He murmurs and then moves on, past the weaver's workshop, where long shutters creak slightly in the breeze, past the small chapel with its crooked steeple, where the bell rope hangs still as a shadow. He does not light the torch here, not at the chapel. Some things are meant to remain dim at night-quiet places, places for whispered hopes and silent pleas. Halric treads softly here, letting his footsteps fade into the stillness, letting his breath come slow and even. To the east, the cobbled path narrows again, leading toward the potter's row. Clay dust lingers in the mortar, between stones, even after all this time. During the day it is alive with shouts and wheel songs, the rhythmic scrape of tools shaping wet earth. But now it rests. Unglazed bowls sit on shelves behind shuttered windows. Kilns cooled, their fire-brick mouths yawning in sleep. Halric passes by slowly, his lantern briefly catching the sheen of a half-finished pitcher, its curve still soft, its handle not yet affixed. He smiles to himself. The potter's apprentice always forgets to bring it in, a habit, a quirk, the kind of detail that roots you to a place, not just the shape of the walls, but the patterns of the people. He glances upward as he walks, noting the sky. The moon has shifted slightly westward, casting longer shadows now. He can almost feel the edge of the night beginning to soften. Not dawn, yet not for some time, but the energy of the darkness has changed. It is settled, deeper now, more dreamlike. The kind of hour where memory slips more easily into imagination, and time feels like it stretches rather than ticks. He walks along the back edge of the Taylor Street next. Here, bits of thread cling to the brick like lint, and the smell of lye and wool lingers faintly. A small cat sits atop a pile of bundled firewood, blinking slowly in his direction. He nods at it, respectful. Cats are honored here, especially among the night watch. They keep silent watch over alleys and attics and seem to understand more than they let on. Halric has long thought they are kindred spirits keepers of twilight secrets, walking through the world on silent paws. As he nears the lower courtyard of the apothecary's garden, he slows. This part of the city has a hush to it unlike the rest. The garden lies tucked behind stone walls, its gates sealed but not locked. Herbs hang from crossbeams. Leaves glisten with dew. Moonlight kisses the tops of elder and valerian. Halric lets himself into the space, careful to close the gate behind him. He steps along the path, not for any duty, but for the peace it gives him. The air here smells of dried lavender and damp mint, and the gravel crunches softly beneath his feet. This is where he often rests for a few minutes. A wooden bench beneath a crooked apple tree waits for him, its surface warped and polished smooth from years of use. He lowers himself slowly, feeling the wood press into the back of his legs, feeling the lantern's warmth on his side. The city feels far away here, even though it's still all around him. No footsteps, no chimneys, just rustling leaves and the quiet pulse of growing things. He closes his eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to listen more deeply. A soft breeze stirs the branches above him, and somewhere nearby a frog croaks once, and then falls silent. The night holds still again, and Halric feels something he rarely names belonging, not to the people, necessarily, or even to the job, but to the rhythm, the gentle, patient rhythm of a city that breathes in silence, that dreams through walls and alleys, that remembers through footsteps like his. After a few minutes, he stands again, not stiff, but grounded. He checks the lantern, the flame still steady, its oil just enough for a few more hours. He steps back out into the city, the gravel giving way to cobble, the hush of the garden fading into the wider hush of the night. His next stop is the grain store, not because there is danger there, but because the rats have grown bold lately. He walks its perimeter slowly, noting the faint scurry of paws behind the wooden panels. He taps the door with his staff and says aloud, "Too early for breakfast, lads." And then he smiles, hearing the sudden, startled silence within. He moves on, retracing part of his path now, circling back toward the inner gate. The round is never just a loop. It's a weave, a spiral, a dance through memory and matter. Each pass reinforces the pattern. Each glance reminds the city, I see you. I am here, and still the city sleeps. Halric finds himself beneath the bell tower once more, though he will not climb it again tonight. One chime per shift is enough more would disturb the old rhythm. The bell is not there to count time in the modern way, but to anchor the night, to mark its pulse like a heartbeat in a sleeping body. He rests a hand on the outer stone wall and feels the chill that lives in its bones. The stones here are darker, smoother. They drink moonlight instead of reflecting it, as though they've seen too much to give anything back. He lingers there for a moment, breathing slowly, watching a moth flutter near his lantern flame before it moves on into the shadows. A sound breaks the stillness, very faint but distinct. Not alarming, only curious. The gentle creak of wood shifting. He tilts his head, focusing. It's coming from the carpenter's yard, just beyond the north slope of the lane. He doesn't hurry. There's no need to rush. Danger, if it were real, would not announce itself with such a sleepy rhythm. He follows the sound at his own pace, the lantern swinging slightly in his hand. As he approaches the gate, he sees the cause. A shutter on the second floor of the woodworking shop has worked itself loose, swinging softly in the breeze. The iron latch hangs broken. Halric walks beneath it and leans his staff against the gatepost. From beneath his cloak, he draws a length of twine and a small wooden wedge tools he carries for just such occasions. It takes him only a few quiet moments to tie the shutter closed and wedge it secure. A temporary fix, but enough until the carpenter returns in the morning. The city is full of such little moments, things unnoticed by most, but gently corrected by watchful eyes. Not heroic, not grand, just necessary, just right. He stands back and nods once, satisfied, and then continues his route toward the artisan's quarter. This is one of the oldest parts of the city, where the buildings lean together, as if in conversation. The streets are narrower, the corners sharper, and everything smells faintly of iron, wax, and tanned leather. During the day, this district hums with the hiss of molten metal, the thump of mallets, the hiss of steam. At night, it is still, but not silent. There is a hum here, too, deeper than sound, a kind of memory that lingers in the beams and bricks. As he walks, Halric lets the lantern light play across the signs that hang from each shop. A carved boot for the cobbler, a silver spoon for the smith, a green-leafed wreath for the candlemaker. Each one tells a story. Each one marks a life. He glances into a narrow passage where someone has painted a faded mural, an archer, a stag, and a moon. No one knows who did it. It appeared one spring and has slowly faded since. Some say it marks a forgotten legend, others a private grief. Halric doesn't know, but he respects it. He pauses here every night, if only for a moment, to nod at the moon painted there, and at whatever memory it holds. From the artisan's quarter, he turns southward again, following a sloping path that dips toward the river gate. This part of the city lies lower, closer to the water, and the scent of damp reeds and river stone rises up to meet him. The gate itself is rarely used. Now trade no longer flows from this direction, but it remains part of his route. Vines curl up around its hinges. The wood swells in the damp and needs to be checked regularly. He does so now, crouching briefly, testing the iron banding, the lock, the seam where two planks meet. All sound, all whole. He stands and stretches, listening to the soft burble of the river just beyond the wall. The current is slow tonight, sluggish with summer's weight. Frogs sing faintly in the reeds, and a heron lifts off from the bank with a creaking flap of wings. Halric watches it disappear into the darkness, a ghost bird slipping between layers of shadow. He remains there for a while, breathing deeply. The scent of the river is strong, earthy, and wet. It grounds him. There's something eternal about it, water, flowing as it always has, reshaping the land grain by grain. never noticed, never stopped. Back through the lower gate he walks, ascending now into the northern rise, where the scholars' quarter lies. Here the streets are lined with buildings made of lighter stone, their windows tall and narrow, some still glowing faintly with candlelight. Students and scribes often work late, their thoughts too restless for early sleep. Halric walks quietly through these streets, so as not to disturb them. He passes the old university wall, where ivy climbs thick over the plaster, and glances at the sundial above the entry arch. It tells nothing of use at night, but he's always found its presence reassuring, like a promise that the sun will, indeed, return. A parchment scroll sits tucked into the wrought iron gate, likely dropped or forgotten. He retrieves it carefully and places it on the inner stoop, securing it beneath a stone. Another small task, another silent favor. It will be found in the morning, dry and safe. The wind picks up a little here, funneling between the taller buildings, and he tightens his cloak with one hand, letting the fabric wrap around him like a second skin. His lantern casts long, flickering shadows across the cobbles, dancing in rhythm with the swaying trees overhead. He walks along the edge of the quarter, skirting the wall, where medicinal herbs grow in neat rows behind barred windows, sage, hyssop, rue, and something pale and vine-like that he does not know the name of. Halric glances at the stars again. They've shifted subtly, he can tell by the position of the hunter's belt. Still plenty of night left. Still time to walk. He does not grow tired. The movement is part of him now. Each step reinforces the connection, not just to the city, but to the very idea of watching, of tending, of keeping. It is an old role, but a sacred one, even if the people inside these walls no longer give it much thought. Some still leave bread on the windowsill. Others nod politely when they pass him at dawn. But for most, the night watchman is simply there, a shadow among shadows, a figure glimpsed and then forgotten. And that is how he prefers it. Halric moves now toward the garden terrace near the physician S compound, tiered stretch of earth nestled against the inner wall, where soft plants and stone benches wait beneath fig trees and creeping vines. This place, like the apothecary's garden, offers a rare kind of stillness. It's not widely known, even among the city's residents. Most assume it's private land, or they overlook it altogether. Halric has visited it every night for years. He walks the path slowly, tracing the ridged lines of a carved stone railing with the side of his finger. The warmth from his lantern brushes against the ivy-covered wall beside him, causing faint shadows to ripple like ink in water. On one bench, a wooden bowl sits forgotten, filled with small, round seeds wrapped in cloth, perhaps left by a gardener or by the old physician who sometimes walks here with a cane and a limp, talking softly to himself. Halric does not disturb it. These objects are part of the night still life, set pieces that create the mood of this silent performance he walks through. He lowers himself onto another bench and lets out a long, slow breath. From here, the stars are easy to see. The treetops frame them like stained glass in motion. He watches as a thin wisp of cloud slides past, rushing across the constellation known as the Boar's Tusk. Long ago, his father used to tell stories about the stars, how they were not just distant fires, but the souls of watchmen who never fell asleep on duty. Those who finished their lives with every lantern lit, every gate checked, every lock secured, were given a place in the sky. Halric never truly believed it, but there was comfort in the idea. to watch forever without weariness, to burn gently and silently above a world that always needed tending. He stays a moment longer, listening to the breeze rustle through fig leaves, then stands again and resumes his path, down through the narrow walk that curves like a question mark around the stone bathhouse. Steam still drifts from one of the roof vents someone stayed late soaking, a quiet luxury known only to a few. The bathhouse keeper is kind to Halric, often leaving him a crust of bread or a flask of rosewater. Halric makes a note to stop by in the morning and return the kindness with a story. People like stories, even short ones, especially if they come just before sleep. As he rounds the corner into the Mason Square, the architecture shifts, walls thicker, chimneys broader, blocks of stone stacked in neat piles along the edges of the street. The masons rise early, and their apprentices often leave behind tools too tired to carry. Halric scans the area. A small chisel lies at the foot of a low wall. He picks it up, weighing its cool iron shape in his hand, and places it on a nearby workbench. He knows the apprentice who uses it, a lanky boy with a lopsided cap who never ties his boots properly. Another detail filed away in Halric's mind, like thousands of others. No ledger needed. The city's story lives in his head and heart, more complete than any book. The silence deepens here. Not a single shutter is open. No footsteps, no cats. Even the wind seems to tread more lightly among the heavier stone. This part of the city always feels like it's holding its breath, as if remembering something too ancient for words. Halric doesn't linger long. He knows the feeling well. He respects it. Some places don't want company for long. He tips his head in a small bow and moves on, careful not to let the lantern flicker. He circles now back toward the main thoroughfare, the artery of the city, empty now but worn smooth by centuries of carts and boots and festival processions. The stonework here is older, almost glassy, in parts from the weight of so many souls. It gleams slightly beneath the lantern light, like the polished scales of some sleeping creature. Halric walks slowly, letting the glow spread outward in a widening arc ahead of him. He listens to the echo of his own steps, the faint whisper of linen against leather, the muted clink of the keys at his side. He begins to hum again, soft, tuneless, something born from memory and comfort, rather than music. The sound curls through the air, low and warm. His humming is not meant to keep fear away, as it once was in older times, but to remind the city it is not alone, that someone still moves beneath its roofs, still watches its breath, still tends its slumber. It is a lullaby in motion, a wordless vow. The statues at the square's center come into view now, four in all, carved from pale granite. A miller, a mother, a soldier, and a monk. Together they face outward toward the corners of the city, as if keeping vigil themselves. Their faces are warmed by rain and time. Halric walks between them slowly, letting the lantern touch each one with light, if only for a moment. Some say the statues move slightly each winter. Others say their expressions change at night. Halric isn't sure either way, but he still greets them with a quiet nod and a word of thanks, as if they could hear and understand. There's a rhythm to it all, this long, patient walk through stone and shadow, and Halric has come to believe that rhythm is the city's real heartbeat. Not the noise of the day, not the clang of hammers or the chatter of crowds, but this gentle pulsing quiet, the careful step, the watchful eye, the soft breath of sleep over rooftops, This is what keeps the walls standing, what keeps the gates shut, what binds the cobbles together with more than mortar. And as he turns down the final stretch of this circuit, nearing the edge of the garden path once again, he feels that deep sense of alignment, that quiet certainty that everything is, for now, as it should be. And still the city sleeps. There's a low wall near the north barracks, one that runs along the edge of the dry moat, a remnant from times when danger came with banners and siege towers. Now the moat is filled with ivy, wild violets, and the occasional rabbit bold enough to venture into the open. Halric walks its length slowly, the lantern held close so as not to startle anything hiding in the vines. The barracks are quiet this hour. The soldiers are not like the watchmen. They rest at night, their work spent in daylight drills and drills again, standing stiff in metal and obeying the loud cadence of shouted orders. Halric is the other side of that coin soft-footed, silent, drawn to quiet corners and gentle routines. He stops at the foot of the old tower keep, where the stairs twist steeply to the training hall above. This tower has long since fallen out of formal use, but one room remains active, a candle room, a sort of ritual space, where young guards light a wick before their first watch, offering it as a symbol that they'll stay awake through their service. Halric peeks in now and sees the soft flicker of several little flames dancing on a ledge near the far wall. The smell of melted wax is strong, mixed with the faint scent of leather and dried straw. One candle has gone out. He steps inside, relights it from his lantern, and watches as the new flame takes shape small at first, then blooming with quiet confidence. Another small task, another promise kept. Back outside, the air is cooler, the kind of chill that settles not just on skin, but inside the folds of fabric, threading itself gently into every seam. Halric breathes it in, grounding himself in the clarity that only the middle of the night can bring. His fingers brush the worn edge of the watchman's journal, tucked in the inner pocket of his coat. He doesn't write in it often, only when something unusual happens. Tonight, there's nothing of note. And yet, perhaps he'll mark it anyway, just a line. Something about the shutter on the carpenter's shop, or the stars being especially still tonight. He makes a mental note, then turns toward the oldest district in the city, the roots of everything, where the original settlement once stood before the walls ever rose. This area is rougher, the stones darker, not from soot or ash, but simply from age. Aged differently, worn deep. The alleys are tighter here, the buildings closer, many of them leaning in peculiar directions. Some say the district shifts over time, that its pathways don't quite stay still. Halric doesn't argue. He's walked these streets for so long, he can sense when a corner feels unfamiliar, or when a door seems to breathe a little louder than it did the week before. He walks carefully, not out of fear, but reverence. This place holds the bones of the city, both real and remembered. A crumbling fountain sits in the center of one square, its spout dry for decades. Vines creep through the cracked basin, and an old rusted coin still glints faintly beneath the surface of the stone bowl. Halric pauses here, letting the lantern rest on the edge, letting the silence settle. He traces the worn inscription in the stone, now barely legible. It was a blessing once. Something about safe returns, long journeys, and the strength of rooted hearts. The kind of words carved when people still believed magic could be trapped in stone. He moves on. A short alley leads him behind what was once the candle guild. Now a row of dwellings for older residents who rarely venture out. Curtains move slightly behind fogged windows, and somewhere a faint cough is heard, muffled and soft. He doesn't disturb the silence, he only observes, noting that all doors are shut, that the lantern brackets remain fixed to the walls, even if the candles within them have long since burned away. He leaves a spare taper on a doorstep, a quiet gesture, and continues his path. Farther down, he reaches the inner well path, a stretch that curves near the central tower, almost forgotten. Many citizens don't even know it exists. Halric does. It was shown to him by the last night watchman, a man named Buran with a voice like dry oak and hands that always smelled of oil and wool. Buran had walked these same paths for more than 30 winters. When Halric first joined, still unsure of his own silence, Buran said, "You're not guarding people, you're cradling sleep." At the time, Halric hadn't understood. Now he feels the truth of it in every step. Night is a fragile thing, and someone must hold it gently without shaking it awake. The inner well sits in a hollow, surrounded by fig trees and bramble. The water inside is still black, mirror smooth. He crouches beside it now, staring down into his reflection, faint and golden in the lantern's light. For a moment he does nothing, just watches the flicker of himself, the flicker of the night. Then he leans back, pulling a small pouch from his belt. Inside are 3 polished stones, smooth river rocks he's carried for years. He drops one quietly into the well. It doesn't make a sound loud enough to break the stillness, just a tiny plip, followed by rings of motion. He never tells anyone why he does it. It's just part of the walk now. As he rises, he feels a shift in the air. Not a wind, not a temperature, drop something softer, subtler. The kind of shift that only comes when the very edge of morning begins to ripple at the border of the world. He can't see it yet, not with the eye, but the skin notices, the bones notice. The breath grows just a little warmer, and the hush becomes deeper, rounder. Halric knows the night is beginning to loosen its hold. There are still streets to walk, still corners to check before light finds the rooftops. And so he lifts the lantern once more, tucks the pouch of stones away, and turns back toward the quiet maze of sleeping stone. And still the city sleeps. He moves now along the wall known as the Whispering Way, a long, narrow stretch that runs along the inside of the eastern parapet, just beneath the arrow loops where guards once stood, long before Halric's time. No one remembers why it was named the Whispering Way. Not exactly. Some say it's because the wind carries voices here from other parts of the city. Others claim it was once a place for secret meetings between cloaked figures and messages passed by candlelight. Halric doesn't much believe in either version, but there's something about the acoustics of this place, how the lantern's flame crackles louder, how even a breath feels magnified. He walks with a gentler step here, softer than soft, as though the stones beneath his boots remember every conversation ever spoken atop them. On the far end of the passage, an arch opens to what was once the guardhouse courtyard, now long overgrown. Grass grows tall here. Wild flowers bloom between flagstones. In the center, a cracked sundial slumps against its pedestal like a dozing elder. Halric steps into the space and takes a moment to let the lantern's glow touch the faces of the old buildings. Vines curtain most of the windows. A door hangs slightly ajar, not from intrusion, but from the gentle work of time. The building sighs in its sleep. He sits for a moment on the lip of the old well that anchors the center of the yard. It's sealed now, covered by a rusted grate. He leans back against the stone and lets the silence fold around him like a second cloak. The sounds here are gentle, the whisper of grass brushing grass, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft creak of wood, and its slow dance with wind and memory. Halric closes his eyes for a moment, not to rest, but to listen, deeply, to the layers beneath the silence. And there faint, but clear, the soft scurrying of something small, a mouse perhaps, dragging a fallen petal to a hidden den. Life, even now, the city breathes. He rises again, the motion smooth and unhurried, and circles the yard one final time, trailing his hand along the stone wall as he walks. His fingers find a small notch, one he carved himself years ago when he first learned the full watchman's path. Just a mark to say, I've been here. I saw this place. It mattered. He smiles faintly and continues, the lantern glowing steady beside him. The path leads him next to the theater district, or what remains of it. Once this part of the city rang with laughter, lute songs, and the stomp of wooden shoes on stage boards. But the playhouses are quiet now. The largest burned years ago, leaving only a scorched outline and rows of crumbling stone seats, where weeds now sit as the audience. Halric doesn't feel sadness here, only stillness. A performance paused, not forgotten. He walks the edge of the ruins slowly, stopping beside a fallen curtain rod that lies half hidden in moss. He runs a finger along it, brushing away the debris, and for a moment the air seems to shimmer slightly with the echoes of applause that once lived here. Beneath a broken arch, he finds something unusual, a feather, large and gray, tucked into the edge of a cracked brick, likely from one of the herons that sometimes roost along the wall. He takes it gently, brushing it clean, and tucks it into the inside of his cloak. He keeps such tokens, small things, humble in value, but rich in presence. He believes they hold stories, even if they never speak them aloud. From here he moves south again, toward the water channel that runs beneath the city, the hidden lifeline that carries runoff and rainwater out toward the old marsh. Most don't think of it, but Halric knows every grate, every channel gate, every spot where stone turns slick and echoing. He descends a set of stairs hidden behind a bakery wall, emerging into a stone tunnel lit only by the lantern he carries. The air is damp, filled with the scent of earth, water, and the faint tongue of iron. Rats scurry out of sight, but do not linger. They know him. He walks the channel slowly, listening to the way the water echoes. It's lower tonight than usual. He makes a note of it, nothing urgent, but a change worth remembering. He checks the northern sluice, ensures the gate is secure, then returns the way he came, climbing the steps with practiced ease. Back in the upper city, he pauses once more at a small stone chapel nestled beneath the shadow of the tower keep. It's older than the main cathedral, simpler, quieter. The bell here is never rung. It's said the sound wakes the dead. Halric smiles at the old tale. But still, he has never touched the bell rope, nor has anyone he's ever known. The chapel is sacred in a different way, not for ceremony, but for remembrance. Carved into its walls are names, hundreds of them, etched with careful hands over centuries. Names of those lost, not just soldiers or nobles, but bakers, stable hands, midwives, people whose memories rest in the stones. He steps inside and lets the lantern light wash over the nearest wall. The names are soft, eroded in places, but still visible. He finds one at random and reads it aloud, gently, almost like a prayer. Ellen Rith, Candlemaker. The name passes through his lips and into the silence. It joins the quiet like a note into a song, a soft addition to the rhythm of the city's long, slow breath. He steps back outside and feels the night growing thinner, not weaker, but stretched like fabric, pulled gently toward dawn. The sky above is still dark, but at the edges something new stirs. Not color yet, not warmth, but the promise of it. Halric turns north again, beginning the last winding leg of the watch, the final circuit before the city stirs. His lantern remains steady in his hand, the flame unwavering, a small golden heart carried through the sleeping stone. And still the city sleeps. The streets feel quieter now than they have all night, not in absence, but in presence, as though the silence itself has gathered and settled, wrapping the city like a blanket pulled snug against the chin. Halric senses the subtle shift as he walks. The hush is deeper, the air cooler, and the stars, those bright watchful sparks overhead, have begun their slow withdrawal behind the pale breath of morning. Though the sun has not yet touched the rooftops, the dark has grown transparent. It no longer feels endless. It feels like the last few sips of tea from a cooling cup. He makes his way along what locals call Candlewick Lane, a sloped, narrow road where every house once belonged to a candlemaker or a wax trader. Though most of the old candle guilds have moved closer to the markets, the name remains, and so do the iron brackets on every doorstep meant to hold a candle for the watchman. In older days, when Halric was new, this lane would glow with tiny flames, each household lighting one wick as a sign of respect for the one who walked the night. That tradition has faded, but tonight there is one candle, a single small stub, flickering weakly in the iron bracket of a green-shuttered home. It leans slightly to one side, its wax running in tired curls. Halric pauses, holds the lantern close, and gently shields the flame from the wind with his cloak. He does not touch it. He simply watches it for a moment, one fragile flame, greeting another. He moves on down the winding curve that skirts the mill yard. The air here smells faintly of flour, though the grinding stones have long stopped turning for the night. A fine dust coats the walls, pale and soft and strangely quieting, as though even sound moves more slowly here. Halric remembers the miller's daughter, who used to leave seed cakes wrapped in cloth for him on the first day of every season. She left the city 2 years ago, gone to marry a tanner in a village farther south. But sometimes on nights like this, he thinks he can still smell the anise and honey on the wind. His next stop is the roof of the fire post, a small stone building near the heart of the city, designed not as a bell tower or guard post, but simply a place to watch for fire. It has no bell, no flag, only a ladder, a flat roof, and a clear view of the city's core. Halric climbs it slowly, carefully, holding the lantern steady as he rises. At the top, he places it on the ledge and stands with his hands folded behind his back, looking out. From here, the rooftops sprawl like a sea of worn slate and terracotta, patched and mossy in places, with wisps of smoke curling lazily from a handful of chimneys. He can see the baker's roof, the chimney of the blacksmith's shop, the tiny bird nest-topped spire of the old bell tower. The city looks soft from up here, smaller, as if it could be held gently in cupped hands and kept warm. He breathes deeply, filling his lungs with the clean, cool air of the pre-dawn. It tastes faintly of stone, soot, and earth-familiar, grounding, real. He closes his eyes for a moment and lets his awareness expand, as if he's not standing on a rooftop at all, but floating gently above it all, weightless, untethered. A watchman above the city, a star not yet in the sky. When he descends again, he feels no heaviness, only readiness. The night is nearly done, and his steps carry that quiet certainty. He crosses the square by the fountain, one of the few with running water, pausing to watch as a drip falls from the edge of a weathered lion's mouth into the basin below. Each drop makes the faintest sound, like a clock with no urgency. One, another, another. He steps onward without disturbing the rhythm. Past the weaver's lane now, where small looms rest behind dusty windows, and long skeins of dyed wool hang drying on wooden rods. A stray thread clings to his boot as he passes. He stops, plucks it loose, and wains it around his finger for a moment before letting the wind carry it away. A small thing, but a mark nonetheless. In a city like this, the smallest things speak the loudest if one knows how to listen. The horizon begins to pale, barely a shift in tone more than color, a suggestion of warmth at the very edge of the world. The clouds above are still shadowed, but their bellies have begun to glow, soft as embers beneath ash. Howrick makes one last round of the merchant's quarter, pausing by each gate, each window, each turn of stone where hands and hooves have worn grooves into the earth. He checks the ironwork on the northern delivery post, finds the latch unbothered, and dusts a thin layer of frost from the seal with his sleeve. His breath clouds in front of him now, pale and slow. He returns at last to the path beneath the bell tower, where his shift will soon end. The bells are silent now, waiting. They will toll the waking hour soon enough, not by his hand, but by the younger lads who rise with the dawn. Howrick will be gone by then, lantern extinguished, cloak folded over the edge of his cot, boots placed carefully side by side. But before that moment comes, he pauses once more. He stands at the tower's base, lantern in one hand, and looks slowly over the rooftops, the chimneys, the sleeping windows, and the quiet stone paths. The breath of morning is there now, faint but real. It seeps into the corners of the dark and curls gently beneath the eaves. He draws in one last deep breath of night air, holds it in his chest for a long moment, and lets it go. And still the city sleeps. Howrick begins the final sweep, not rushed, not burdened, but reverent, as though closing a book with care, brushing the dust gently from its cover before placing it back upon the shelf. This part of the walk isn't written anywhere. No map, no record. It's not about checking locks or oiling hinges. It's about gratitude, about giving the city thanks for allowing him to walk its bones another night in peace. He takes the eastern path first, where the rooftops glisten with the first breath of dawn light, so faint and so slow that even the cobblestones don't notice at first. The sky is turning gray now, the kind of silver that exists only in these rare in-between hours, neither night nor morning, just soft shadow made gentle by time. He walks toward the old tannery, a place most avoid due to the lingering scent, but Howrick knows better. He knows that the leather workers keep jars of violet water and pressed herbs by their doors to mask the stronger smells, and if you breathe deeply enough, you can sometimes catch the sweetness underneath. He pauses there, just outside the gate, watching the way mist clings to the ground. It swirls slightly when he walks through it, parting like silk curtains drawn back by invisible hands. A fox watches him from the alley, a young one, its coat the color of rust and embers. It does not run. It blinks once, then turns and disappears into the mist. Howrick doesn't follow. It's enough to know that the animal is there, alive, well, sharing the city's sleeping heart. Next comes the mill lane, where the wide water wheel looms silent in the growing light. He lays a hand on the wooden railing beside the channel, feeling the soft vibration of moving water below. It's almost invisible now, just a thin sheet gliding over stone. But he knows the strength it carries. Water is patient, steady, unrelenting. It reminds him of the watch itself, quiet but essential. No one thinks about it, but all depend on it. And so he lingers, letting the sound of water fill his ears, letting it settle into his breath. A few birds call out, now first one, then another, as if announcing the change of shift. Howrick hears a distant rooster, far off, muffled by fog and walls. His next step takes him back to the bakery's outer courtyard, where the door is still shut, but warm light seeps from beneath it. Someone is stirring dough within. The scent is faint, but unmistakable flour and yeast and rising heat. He smiles to himself, knowing the first loaves will soon line the window ledge. For now, though, the world outside remains in its dream. He touches the wooden beam of the doorway gently, and then moves on. He passes by the coop yard where hens cluck faintly in their sleep, a few feathers drifting in the early breeze. The barn beside it breathes heavily, oxen shifting within, chains rattling softly, hooves stamping straw. Life beginning to stir, but not fully awake. Even the animals respect the last moments of the night. Howrick does too. He doesn't speak, doesn't hum now. These final steps are meant to be silent. He returns to the wall walk one last time, climbing the curved steps with measured pace. As he emerges at the top, the view takes his breath for a moment. The sky is opening, no longer gray, but the faintest shade of rose and pale gold, just at the horizon. A river of light ready to rise. The rooftops below stretch quietly toward it, the chimneys casting long shadows, the trees beyond the wall blushing with morning's promise. He walks the length of the wall slowly, letting the first sun touch his face. It's still gentle, like a hand placed lightly on the brow. Not yet warm, but present, certain. He stops at the far turret and looks down at the outer road, still empty, winding like a ribbon through the fields beyond. There will be carts soon, traders, travelers, bakers selling loaves, children waking, stretching, arguing about chores. But for now there is only him, and this place, and the last breath of night. He removes the lantern from his belt and opens the small brass hatch. The flame inside, so loyal all night, flickers once as a breeze dances through it. Then he lowers his face slightly and blows. One slow, steady breath. The flame wavers and dies. Smoke curls upward and fades. The watch is done. Howrick doesn't feel sorrow. There is no grief in letting the night go. It is a cycle as sure and sacred as the rising of the moon. He hooks the lantern back at his side and descends the wall, boots clicking softly down each step, the echo thinner now in the brightening air. At the bottom he walks through the gate into the quiet of the inner court, where the watchman's quarters wait with low walls, thatched eaves, and shutters still closed. He steps inside, undresses slowly, hanging his cloak on a peg, placing the lantern on its wooden shelf. The cot is simple cotton-stuffed mattress, wool blanket, the faint smell of pine tar and soap. He sits, unlacing his boots, rolling his shoulders once, then sliding beneath the blanket without a sound. His eyes close easily, naturally, as though the darkness welcomes him home. And outside the city begins to stir. But for Halric, it is time to sleep. The morning light continues its slow, golden climb over the eastern rooftops, slipping into windows, curling across courtyards, and creeping up the stones of the bell tower like soft fingers waking a giant from slumber. The bells do not ring yet. The hour is near, but not quite. The city is caught in that in-between moment, one foot still in the dream world, the other hesitating before touching down on the cold flagstones of reality. The people inside the walls stir but do not rise. A cough, a stretch, a shift beneath. Linen sheets. The sounds are subtle, but they are everywhere now. Halric dreams, though he would not call it dreaming. It is something slower, quieter, a kind of floating. His body rests fully beneath the woolen blanket, but his thoughts move like river mist trailing through the alleys he walked, brushing against door frames and garden walls, listening again to the hush that he knows so well. His breathing is steady, deep, wrapped in the rhythm of all he has just done. There is no rest as deep as that of a night fully tended, a city fully held, a watchman's final breath exhaled with nothing left undone. The sun begins to warm the slates of the bakery roof now, casting long, honey-colored beams onto the cobbles. Below, birds perch along the eaves and begin their morning chorus, tentative at first, then more confident as the light strengthens. One of the bakery's side windows opens with a creak, and the baker's apprentice leans out, blinking into the light. He sees the stillness of the square and smiles, the way one smiles at something known and loved. He doesn't notice the watchman's trail, not consciously, but his footfalls land a little lighter on the stones. He walks with the unspoken comfort of someone who feels protected without ever knowing how. Across the city, windows crack open. Fireplaces are stirred to life. Water is poured into pots. Wooden shutters clack softly against stucco walls. A dog barks once, then trots into a sunbeam. Children's voices rise in distant giggles, quickly hushed by sleepy mothers. The city has begun to wake, but it does so gently, without tension, as though it has been held in the palm of something safe and slow dot inside the watchman's quarters. Halric sleeps on, body curled, the soft sound of his breath joining the quiet symphony of settling wood and ticking iron clocks. The lantern rests beside him, its glass still warm to the touch, though its flame has long since died. The boots by the cot are dusty, the cloak, still faintly scented with smoke and moss and cold air, hangs without movement from the peg. And, in that stillness, something sacred lingers, the residue of care, of presence, of devotion fulfilled without applause. A younger watchman enters the chamber quietly, soft-footed and yawning. He does not wake Halric. He moves with respect, pulling his own cloak from the peg beside the door, checking the wick of his own lantern, testing the latch with a practiced hand. He glances once toward the sleeping form on the cot, and nods not as a question, but a quiet thank you. Then he steps back into the morning, where the light is brightening, and the warmth of the sun has begun to chase away the last beads of dew. The tower bells finally ring, not loudly, not an alarm, just a calm, measured toll. 1, 2, 3. Chimes echo across the rooftops, bouncing between alleyways, sliding down roof tiles, curling beneath doorways. The sound belongs here. It is the city's voice. It signaled that the night has passed, and all is well. The people rise, they stretch, they murmur, they begin their day with pots and pails and early errands. Some light candles, others open gates. A few pause to admire the first blooms pushing up from the cracks in the garden walls. Life begins again, not with noise, but with rhythm. The rhythm the night has prepared. And though few think of it, though fewer still speak of it, they are stepping into a world that has been kept, watched, and quietly guarded until this very moment. And in a quiet room of stone, the watchman rests, his dreams carry him still through. Lantern-lit lanes and whispering ivy, through torch-lit walls and silver-bell towers, through memory and routine and something far deeper, something ancestral, something known in the bones. He does not dream of danger. He dreams of stillness, of listening, of the city, breathing as he walks. And when he wakes again, it will be with quiet hands and sure feet, ready to repeat the rhythm once more. And until then, the city lives on in his silence. And still, though the sun has risen, the city sleeps inside him. As the morning hours unfold, the city moves with deliberate softness. There is no rush in these first steps of the day, only the natural exhale that follows deep, uninterrupted rest. In the marketplace, a cart creaks into place beside the well, its wooden wheels groaning slightly under the weight of freshly pulled carrots and turnips, the scent of damp soil still clinging to their roots. The vendor's hands, chapped and strong, work without speaking. He does not look up at the rooftops, nor to the bell tower. But if you asked him later, he would tell you the morning felt unusually calm, unusually steady. He could not say why, but it did. Across the street, an old woman scatters crumbs for the birds, leaning on a crooked cane that has walked as many city blocks as Halrick has in his lifetime. She hums to herself, not a song, just a sound born of memory and rhythm. The birds gather with quick flutters and tiny feet, pecking in the dust. She watches them with a quiet satisfaction, her eyes soft beneath the fold of her shawl. She, too, has lived long enough to sense when something has been tended, when the fabric of the world has been folded properly the night before, smoothed down and made ready for waking Dot in the scholars' quarter. A student turns a page in a heavy book. The morning light angles through the high window and spills across the vellum, catching the glint of iron-bound corners and the curling flourish of hand-scribed ink. He doesn't realize it, but this page was opened exactly at the right moment, when his mind is most ready, when the city's breath moves in harmony with his own. He had slept well, deeper than usual, and wakes with a strange sense of completeness, as if a door has been opened within him and far beneath all these waking lives. In the place where Halrick rests, time holds still. The quarters remain quiet. The only sound is the ticking of a long case clock, slow, ponderous, and kind. Outside the thick wooden door, the world moves on, but inside, the air is heavy with rest. Halrick lies as he did before, one hand draped lightly across his chest, his expression unreadable but peaceful. If you stood beside him, you would not want to speak. You would not want to disturb what surrounds him now, a cocoon of fulfillment, of silent duty honored, of footsteps taken with care. Eventually the cot creaks, not from Howrick, from the air settling, from the blanket shifting slightly in a breeze, from the open window. A single leaf, curled in gold, tumbles in and lands on the floor beside his boot. It is the first true sign that the seasons are preparing to turn again. That soon his cloak will smell of frost and chimney smoke instead of moss and river mist. But for now it is still the tale of summer, the whisper of autumn waiting its turn. Hours pass. The sun arcs higher. The bustle grows, but always with that lingering echo of serenity, the kind that doesn't come from luck or fortune or mere timing. It comes from being held, from knowing someone watched while you slept, from being seen without ever having to look. In the early afternoon, Howrick stirs. Not with a start, but with the ease of someone who has slept at the right time, in the right way. He draws in a long breath, stretching one arm overhead, then the other. His joints creak slightly, but not in pain, in rhythm. He sits up slowly, blinking against the light that filters through the curtain. It is soft and golden now, more honey than silver, casting the room in a warm hush. He swings his legs over the edge of the cot and sits there for a moment, simply breathing, remembering, not the way one recalls a dream, but the way one remembers. A path walked in the dark, a road whose every twist is still felt in the soles of the feet. His boots are still beside the bed, the leather curled slightly where they always do, and his lantern sits quiet and cool on the wooden shelf, its glass smudged with the traces of many nights. He does not rush. He never rushes. Instead, he reaches for the small wooden basin beside the door, pours water from a stone jug, and washes his face. The water is cold, bracing, but clean. As he pats his cheeks dry with a cloth, he glances toward the coat peg where his cloak hangs. It has not moved, but it waits. Everything in this room waits for him, as it has always done, as the night waits. As the city waits, he dresses in silence, layering wool and leather with practiced ease. Each piece holds a story. Each stitch is known by heart. The cloak goes on last, heavy but familiar, like being embraced by something older than memory. Then he sits at the small wooden desk in the corner of the room. There is a notebook there, thin, worn, bound in rough twine. He opens it carefully and writes a single line. The shutter on the carpenter's loft was loose again. Tied it down. One candle lit on Candlewick Lane. He pauses, then adds, no broken silences, no unsettled stone. That is enough. He closes the book gently and ties the twine around it once more. Outside, the city lives in full color now. People walk and work and speak. Doors open, children chase chickens through courtyards. Traders haggle over sacks of grain. No one stops to think of the silence that came before. No one wonders why the streets feel so balanced, why the air feels untroubled. But the stillness remains, like the breath you didn't know you were holding until someone reminded you to let go. Howrick steps out into the light. He blinks, adjusting, then walks, not into the crowd, not into the bustle, but toward the edge of the garden terrace, where the vines climb and the stone bench waits beneath the crooked apple tree. He does not need to go far. Tonight he will walk again, But for now, he listens. He watches Dot and the city, for all its noise, continues to move, to the silent rhythm he left behind. As the morning hours unfold, the city moves with deliberate softness. There is no rush in these first steps of the day, only the natural exhale that follows deep, uninterrupted rest. In the marketplace, a cart creaks into place beside the well, its wooden wheels groaning slightly under the weight of freshly pulled carrots and turnips, the scent of damp soil still clinging to their roots. The vendor's hands, chapped and strong, work without speaking. He does not look up at the rooftops, nor to the bell tower. But if you asked him later, he would tell you the morning felt unusually calm, unusually steady. He could not say why, but it did. Across the street, an old woman scatters crumbs for the birds, leaning on a crooked cane that has walked as many city blocks as Howrick has in his lifetime. She hums to herself, not a song, just a sound born of memory and rhythm. The birds gather with quick flutters and tiny feet, pecking in the dust. She watches them with a quiet satisfaction, her eyes soft beneath the fold of her shawl. She, too, has lived long enough to sense when something has been tended, when the fabric of the world has been folded properly the night before, smoothed down and made ready for waking Dot in the scholar's quarter. A student turns a page in a heavy book. The morning light angles through the high window and spills across the vellum, catching the glint of iron-bound corners and the curling flourish of hand-scribed ink. He doesn't realize it, but this page was opened exactly at the right moment, when his mind is most ready, when the city's breath moves in harmony with his own. He had slept well, deeper than usual, and wakes with a strange sense of completeness, as if a door has been opened within him, Dot, and far beneath all these waking lives. In the place where Howrick rests, time holds still. The quarters remain quiet. The only sound is the ticking of a long-case clock, slow, ponderous, and kind. Outside the thick wooden door, the world moves on, but inside, the air is heavy with rest. Howrick lies as he did before, one hand draped lightly across his chest, his expression unreadable but peaceful. If you stood beside him, you would not want to speak. You would not want to disturb what surrounds him now, a cocoon of fulfillment, of silent duty honored, of footsteps taken with care. Eventually the cot creaks, not from Howrick, from the air settling, from the blanket shifting slightly in a breeze, from the open window. A single leaf, curled and gold, tumbles in and lands on the floor beside his boot. It is the first true sign that the seasons are preparing to turn again, that soon his cloak will smell of frost and chimney smoke instead of moss and river mist. But for now it is still the tale of summer, the whisper of autumn waiting its turn. Hours pass. The sun arcs higher, the bustle grows, but always with that lingering echo of serenity, the kind that doesn't come from luck or fortune or mere timing. It comes from being held, from knowing someone watched while you slept, from being seen without ever having to look. Dot in the early afternoon. Howrick stirs Dot not with a start, but with the ease of someone who has slept at the right time, in the right way. He draws in a long breath, stretching one arm overhead, then the other. His joints creak slightly, but not in pain, in rhythm. He sits up slowly, blinking against the light that filters through the curtain. It is soft and golden now, more honey than silver, casting the room in a warm hush. He swings his legs over the edge of the cot and sits there for a moment, simply breathing, remembering, not the way one recalls a dream, but the way one remembers. A path walked in the dark, a road whose every twist is still felt in the soles of the feet. His boots are still beside the bed, the leather curled slightly where they always do, and his lantern sits quiet and cool on the wooden shelf, its glass smudged with the traces of many nights. He does not rush. He never rushes. Instead, he reaches for the small wooden basin beside the door, pours water from a stone jug, and washes his face. The water is cold, bracing but clean. As he pats his cheeks dry with a cloth, he glances toward the coat peg where his cloak hangs. It has not moved, but it waits. Everything in this room waits for him, as it has always done, as the night waits. As the city waits, he dresses in silence, layering wool and leather with practiced ease. Each piece holds a story. Each stitch is known by heart. The cloak goes on last, heavy but familiar, like being embraced by something older than memory. Then he sits at the small wooden desk in the corner of the room. There is a notebook there, thin, worn, bound in rough twine. He opens it carefully and writes a single line. The shutter on the carpenter's loft was loose again. Tied it down. One candle lit on Candlewick Lane. He pauses, then adds, no broken silences, no unsettled stone. That is enough. He closes the book gently and ties the twine around it once more. Outside, the city lives in full color now. People walk and work and speak. Doors open, children chase chickens through courtyards. Traders haggle over sacks of grain. No one stops to think of the silence that came before. No one wonders why the streets feel so balanced, why the air feels untroubled. But the stillness remains, like the breath you didn't know you were holding until someone reminded you to let go. Hal Rick steps out into the light. He blinks, adjusting, then walks, not into the crowd, not into the bustle, but toward the edge of the garden terrace, where the vines climb and the stone bench waits beneath the crooked apple tree. He does not need to go far. Tonight he will walk again, but for now, he listens. He watches Dot in the city, for all its noise, continues to move, to the silent rhythm he left behind. The lantern flame steadies almost instantly, a small and perfect bloom of light that casts soft halos on the inner walls of the stone corridor. Its golden breath flickers gently on the worn wood of the watchman's door as Howrick closes it behind him, latching it without sound. The cloak falls neatly over his shoulders, its edges familiar against his fingertips, the scent of night and soot still lingering from the hours before. This moment, the first breath of the watch, the first step back into the hush, is not grand. It is not dramatic. It is not even seen, but it is holy, and Howrick knows it. He takes the eastern path tonight, beginning at the base of the old granary, where the stones stay warm longer into the evening. The air here still smells faintly of barley dust and last year's grain, though no cart has come to this corner in many weeks. A moth flutters up from the base of the stone steps as he passes, disturbed by the shifting light. It circles once, then disappears again into shadow. Howrick watches it go with a kind of silent greeting, as if their paths, though so different in form, are somehow shared. The cobbles here are uneven, pushed and sloped by generations of frost and footsteps. Halric walks with care, not because he fears a fall, but because there is no need to rush. The night isn't something to conquer. It's something to tend, to cradle, to understand. And so he does, listening to the small sounds the world offers in return. The soft drip of water from a downspout, the distant creak of an old wooden sign swinging in a lazy breeze, a horse shifting its weight in a stall 2 streets over. He turns into the narrow lane that curves behind the mill, the same place he paused the night before to feel the waters hum through the wooden rail. Tonight it is quieter, less current, more reflection. The water is low and the surface glassy, catching the faint shimmer of lantern light as it moves beside him. He stops briefly to look into it, the way one might look into a companion's. Eyes, not searching for anything, just being seen. Further on, he passes the doorway where ivy climbs high into the chimney stack, curling through the cracks like a green memory. The cat from the night before is waiting there again, seated upright, like a sentry. Its eyes catch the lantern's glow and reflect it back in miniature, like twin moons set in fur. Halric nods once. The cat does not move, but blinks slowly once. A quiet truce. A shared route. He reaches the outer wall walk just as the last. Streak of daylight vanishes behind the western ridge. The sky is ink now, tinged faintly with blue near the horizon, but darkening with each breath. He mounts the steps slowly, feeling the old familiar pull in his knees, the slight protest in the ankles that have served him through so many years. The wall is still here, still cold, still watching. As he steps onto its narrow path, the city opens up beneath him again. From this vantage it looks no different than the night before. The same rooftops, the same chimney trails, the same quiet gardens and shuttered windows. But Halric knows better. The city is never exactly the same. It carries forward everything it has seen, everything it has forgotten. It turns those things over in its dreams. Every shift of brick, every wind-blown scrap of parchment in an alley, every creak of an unlatched shutter tells the story of a place always moving. He moves along the parapet, checking the torches as he goes. Some are low, others steady. He tops, each one with a whisper of oil from the small flask at his side, reigniting only those that flicker near death. The flame must not go out, not because of danger necessarily, but because the flame is a promise, a rhythm, a breath in stone. Halfway across the northern wall, he pauses. This is where the ivy once grew so thick that a deer wandered up the embankment and onto the path before being gently turned away. It left behind no damage, only a few hoof prints and the memory of surprise. Halric remembers it clearly. He had stood right here, just as he does now, and watched the creature look back at him before it turned and vanished into the trees beyond. A reminder, he thought then, that the city and the wild are not so far apart. Just two kinds of silence dressed differently. Below the wall, a distant voice calls out. Not urgent, just the meandering echo of a late-night song drifting up from the tavern quarter. It fades quickly, swallowed by the thickness of the stone. Halric does not react. He's heard it before, this same voice, or one like it, singing out of loneliness or ail or joy. The city breathes differently in that quarter, more erratic, more tangled. But it, too, is part of the whole, and even chaos has its rhythm. If you know how to listen, He continues his path along the top of the wall until he reaches the corner turret. The wind is stronger here, sliding between the narrow columns like fingers through harp strings. He leans against the stone for a moment, letting it wash over him. The scent is sharper now, dry bark, distant hearth smoke, a hint of something metallic in the air that might be rain coming. He notes it quietly in his mind. The morning might be wet dot, and then he does what he always does here. He closes his eyes. He hums, but it is not a song, not exactly. Just a string of tones he's always known, passed down through time, not by name or lyric, but by sound and breath. He hums it gently, one note folding into the next, letting it blend with the wind. The stones seem to absorb it. The city listens, and far below, unseen and unknown, someone stirs in their sleep. They do not wake, but they turn beneath their blanket, and their breath deepens, and whatever dream they were caught in softens, just slightly, because something somewhere has reminded them that they are not alone. The wooden desk is cool beneath his elbows as Howrick sits and reaches for the small, twine-bound notebook, the watchman's log, humble in size but vast in memory. He unties the binding slowly, reverently, as though opening a chest of ancient treasure. The pages whisper as they turn, each one lined with simple entries in the same tidy script. Not full sentences, not always names, just marks, moments, the heartbeat of a city transcribed by quiet hands. He dips his pen into the inkwell and writes, lanterns held steady. The water behind the mill spoke softly. One candle left burning near the weaver's square. No shadows wandered. He pauses. The silence around him is perfect, not empty, but saturated with presence. The kind of silence that comes after music ends and before the applause. He leans back in the chair, closing the book with a gentle motion, retying the twine. His hands are slow now, but sure. From the cot beside the hearth he removes his boots. He folds his cloak and lays it across the back of the chair. The lantern, its flame long since extinguished, now rests cold and still on the shelf. Its glass is smudged with soot and oil, a small artifact of the night just past. Howrick stretches out on the cot, the wool blanket already turned back, welcoming. His body sinks into the familiar mattress, the creak of wood beneath him, a kind of lullaby in itself. The air is warm now, thick with the golden hush of early morning. Beyond the shuttered window, the first full rays of sun begin to slide across. The rooftops catching the tips of chimneys, the curls of ironwork along old balconies. The city is awake, not all at once, not with clamor, but in waves, soft footsteps on stone, spoons clinking in bowls, the gentle bray of a donkey cart beginning its rot. And through it all, Howrick closes his eyes. Sleep comes quickly, not because he is tired, but because the rhythm has been fulfilled. There is a completeness to his breathing now, a peace that comes only from the knowledge that the city rests a little easier because of steps taken in silence, because of things seen and tended without notice. He drifts, not into dreams, but into a deep stillness, the kind that lives below thought, below memory, below time itself, and the city holds him just as he has held it. Outside, children play in the dust. A young mother sweeps her step. A blacksmith laughs with his apprentice, and beneath it all, beneath the noise and the song and the shouting of day, the trace of Howrick's walk remains etched into the cobbles, curled into alleyways, pressed like a seal into the wax of the mornings. Stillness. He does not need thanks. He does not need to be known, because this rhythm is older than words. It is the breath of stone, the patience of wood, the silence of faithful flame. It is the way a city sleeps when someone keeps watch. And tonight, when the light fades and the stars rise again, the watchman will stir once more. The lantern will be lit. And the path will open, because the city, for all its sound and movement and fire, is at its truest when it sleeps. And it is then that someone must walk it, gently, steadily, unseen. So that when the sun rises again, the city will breathe deep and carry on. And somewhere, as it does, a quiet man will be walking, still watching, still listening, still holding the night. And all the while, the city will sleep. The wooden desk is cool beneath his elbows as Howrick sits and reaches for the small, twine-bound notebook, the watchman's log, humble in size but vast in memory. He unties the binding slowly, reverently, as though opening a chest of ancient treasure. The pages whisper as they turn, each one lined with simple entries in the same tidy script. Not full sentences, not always names, just marks, moments, the heartbeat of a city transcribed by quiet hands. He dips his pen into the inkwell and writes. Lanterns held steady. The water behind the mill spoke softly. One candle left burning near the weaver's square. No shadows wandered. He pauses. The silence around him is perfect, not empty, but saturated with presence. The kind of silence that comes after music ends and before the applause. He leans back in the chair, closing the book with a gentle motion, retying the twine. His hands are slow now, but sure. From the cot beside the hearth he removes his boots. He folds his cloak and lays it across the back of the chair. The lantern, its flame long since extinguished, now rests cold and still on the shelf. Its glass is smudged with soot and oil, a small artifact of the night just past. Howrick stretches out on the cot, the wool blanket already turned back, welcoming. His body sinks into the familiar mattress, the creak of wood beneath him a kind of lullaby in itself. The air is warm now, thick with the golden hush of early morning. Beyond the shuttered window, the first full rays of sun begin to slide across. The rooftops, catching the tips of chimneys, the curls of ironwork along old balconies. The city is awake, not all at once, not with clamor, but in waves, soft footsteps on stone, spoons clinking in bowls, the gentle bray of a donkey cart beginning its rut. And through it all, Howrick closes his eyes. Sleep comes quickly, not because he is tired, but because the rhythm has been fulfilled. There is a completeness to his breathing now, a peace that comes only from the knowledge that the city rests a little easier because of steps taken in silence, because of things seen and tended without notice. He drifts, not into dreams, but into a deep stillness, the kind that lives below thought, below memory, below time itself, and the city holds him just as he has held it. Outside, children play in the dust. A young mother sweeps her step. A blacksmith laughs with his apprentice. And beneath it all, beneath the noise and the song and the shouting of day, The trace of Halrich's walk remains etched into the cobbles, curled into alleyways, pressed like a seal into the wax of the mornings. Stillness. He does not need thanks. He does not need to be known, because this rhythm is older than words. It is the breath of stone, the patience of wood, the silence of faithful flame. It is the way a city sleeps when someone keeps watch. And tonight, when the light fades and the stars rise again, the watchman will stir once more, the lantern will be lit. And the path will open, because the city, for all its sound and movement and fire, is at its truest when it sleeps, and it is then that someone must walk it, gently, steadily, unseen. So that when the sun rises again, the city will breathe deep and carry on, and somewhere, as it does, a quiet man will be walking, still watching, still listening, still holding the night. And all the while, the city will sleep.